I never thought my husband's ex-wife would show up at our son's birthday party. That was the moment everything started to fall apart. Let me back up. I'm 27, my husband Peter is 37. We've been married 3 years, together for 6. Before me, he was married to a woman named Allison. They got divorced about a year before we met. Peter is bi, and I've never had a problem with that. I've never had a problem with Allison either, honestly. She was part of his past and I was his present. That's how I saw it. We have a 7-year-old son named Jack. He's adopted, but I love him like he's my own blood. He is my own. Peter and I adopted him after we got married, and I've been his dad ever since. Jack calls me dad, that's all that matters, but Peter's family, they've never fully accepted our marriage. They're pretty homophobic, and they've always made it clear they think Peter should have stayed with Allison. I've heard the comments at holidays, the little digs. Oh, Peter, you and Allison were so good together. Too bad things didn't work out. I just smile and change the subject for Jack's sake. 2 weeks ago was Jack's 7th birthday. We went to Peter's hometown to celebrate with his extended family. I wasn't thrilled about it, but Jack wanted to see his cousins and I wasn't going to ruin his day. Peter's mom, my mother-in-law, offered to host the party at her house. I agreed, thinking it would be a normal afternoon with cake and presents. It was. The party started at 2 in the afternoon. Jack was running around with his cousins, laughing, having the time of his life. I was trying to keep everything together, making sure there were enough plates and the cake was ready. Around 3, I noticed Allison walk through the front door. I froze. My mother-in-law had invited her without telling me, without telling Peter as far as I knew. She just showed up right in the middle of Jack's birthday. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand she leave, but I looked at Jack, who was happily showing his cousins his new toy, and I swallowed it. I wasn't going to make his birthday about drama. So I stayed quiet. I spent the next hour playing with Jack, his cousins, and some of the neighbor kids. I kept my eyes on him, pushing down the knot in my stomach. Then it was time to cut the cake. I went to look for Peter. I checked the living room, the kitchen, the backyard, nothing. I asked his sister if she'd seen him. She shrugged. I walked back inside and started checking the bedrooms. The door to Peter's old room was slightly open. I pushed it open. Peter and Allison were taking their clothes off. They were standing by the bed, his hands on her waist, her lips on his neck. They hadn't heard me. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. My brain just went blank. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked back to the party. I cut the cake without him. I helped Jack open presents. I made sure he had a good time. I was on autopilot. Part of me was in shock and part of me refused to let Jack see anything was wrong. When people started leaving, Allison and Peter finally came back down. Peter looked at me, pulled me aside, and said I should have waited for him to cut the cake. He said it was disrespectful. I stared at him. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants. He went quiet. His face turned pale. I took Jack and we left. I drove back to the hotel and got Jack into bed. He was happy, talking about his presents, didn't notice anything. After he fell asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Silent, ugly crying so I wouldn't wake him. Peter didn't call, he didn't text. He stayed at his mom's house that night. The next morning he showed up at the hotel saying he wanted to talk. He said it was a mistake, that he didn't know why he did it, that Allison had come to him, that it didn't mean anything. I asked him if he was still in love with her. He said no. I asked him if he'd ever done this before. He said no. I asked him why I should believe him. He didn't have an answer. I told him I needed time. I packed our bags and drove Jack home. Peter stayed behind to sort things out with his family. That was 2 weeks ago. Now I'm sitting in our living room. Jack is at school and I don't know what to do. I haven't told anyone. His family will probably blame me. My family lives 3 states away. I feel completely alone. I keep replaying that moment in the bedroom, the way she looked at him, the way he touched her, and I keep thinking about his family. They wanted this. They invited her. They probably planned it. How could they do that to Jack? On his birthday, I don't know if I can forgive Peter. I don't know if I can trust him again. But I also don't know if I can walk away. We have a son, we have a life. I thought we were happy. Maybe I was wrong about everything. That was the first crack. The second crack came from an unexpected place, my own job, but that's another story. In the end, I couldn't forgive him. I tried for 3 more weeks. Peter came back home, slept on the couch, said all the right things, therapy, boundaries, cutting off his family. But every time I looked at him, I saw that bedroom door. Jack asked why Daddy was sad. I didn't have an answer. I filed for divorce. His family called me a homewrecker, said I drove him back to Allison. I stopped caring. I got full custody. Jack and I moved to a new apartment. It's smaller, but it's ours. That was 6 months ago. I still wake up some nights thinking I see her face. But I'm learning to let go. That was my story. But I've read others that made me realize I wasn't alone. Here's one from a woman whose boss crossed every line. My name is Maria. I'm 34 and I've been working at the same company for 8 years. I used to love my job. Then the CEO, Dick, yeah, that's what we called him, decided to make my life a living hell. He had this golden boy, Bob. Bob was a total slacker, but because his wife became a SAHM, Dick thought Bob was a family man. Bob got promoted 3 times in 2 years while I was silently demoted for having a baby. My productivity didn't change. I still hit every target. But I took 12 weeks of maternity leave and apparently that was a crime. So imagine my shock when Bob texted me out of the blue in December. He said, hey, my wife, toddler, and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. Can you host them? No hello, no how are you, just that. I stared at my phone. I hadn't had a raise in 4 years. I was working 60-hour weeks while Bob napped in his office, and he wanted me to house his family for free. He added, if that doesn't work, maybe the company can pay for a hotel. Like that made it better. I didn't answer. I went straight to my meeting with Dick. He brought up Bob's request before I could. Bob tells me you're refusing to help him out, Dick said, leaning back in his chair. That's not very team player of you. I said, I'm not a hotel, I'm an employee. And I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. Dick waved his hand. Bob is a family man, he needs support, you should be grateful you're still employed. That's when I knew I was just the office mother, expected to clean up everyone's mess. I went to HR, the HR lady sighed and said, it's not illegal to ask for a favor. I said, it's hostile, it's demeaning. She said, maybe you're overreacting, are you PMSing? I walked out. I started applying for jobs that night. 2 weeks later, I got an offer from a competitor, double the salary, actual respect. I gave my 2 weeks notice. Dick called me into his office and said, you're making a mistake, Bob needs you. I laughed. I said, Bob can house his own family, I'm done being your mother. I left and never looked back. That one hit close to home, but the next story, it was even crazier because some people will lie about your husband just to break you up. I was 29. My best friend Sarah and I had known each other since I was 11 when my family moved to a new country. She was my anchor, we were in each other's weddings, I thought we were sisters. My husband Mike and I had a 2-year-old son. Life was good. I worked 9 to 2 in an office, often stopped by Mike's workplace for a quick lunch. Sometimes I traveled for work. Sarah knew my schedule. One Tuesday, a red alert weather warning was issued. My work trip to another city got canceled. I stayed home with my son. Mike went out early to secure his business, then came back and made breakfast. It didn't even rain until 1 p.m. We spent the whole day inside, playing, cooking, watching movies. Then on Saturday, Sarah pulled me aside after gym class. Her face was serious. She whispered, I need to tell you something. On Wednesday, I saw your husband making out with a blonde woman in his car. Your son was in the back seat. I felt the blood drain from my face, but then I remembered Wednesday I was home with Mike all day. The weather alert kept us indoors. There was no way he was out with another woman. I asked her 3 times if she was sure it was Wednesday. She said yes each time. I asked if it was during the red alert. She said yes. I asked if she saw my son. She said yes. Then she described the blonde, tall, gorgeous Barbie-like. I just stared at her. I said, Sarah, I was home with Mike all day. We never left the house. Her face went blank, then she said, oh, maybe it was a different day. I said, no, you said Wednesday, you were very specific. I went home and told Mike. He was shocked. We checked my phone's location history. I had been home since the night before. Sarah had lied. Why? I confronted her that night. At first she denied, then she broke down crying. She said she was jealous. She said I had the perfect life, husband, kids, stable job, and she was single and lonely. She thought if she could break us up, I'd have more time to hang out with her. She didn't think about my son. She didn't think about the damage. I cut her off, blocked her number. She tried to apologize for weeks, but I couldn't trust her. Mike and I are still together, but that lie nearly destroyed us. I still feel sick every time I think about her face, so sure of her story. Some people will burn your world down just for company, but the damage from that lie didn't go away overnight. For weeks, I kept checking my phone, half expecting Sarah to send some long apology. Instead, she started texting my husband. Mike showed me the messages. Hey, just wanted to say sorry about the misunderstanding. Hope we can all move past this. Then I miss our friendship. Then can we meet for coffee, just you and me? Mike blocked her too. She even showed up at my gym class the next Saturday. I saw her from across the room and left early. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be. My son Leo kept asking why Auntie Sarah never came over anymore. I told him she was busy. That was a lie and I hated myself for it. But how do you explain to a 2-year-old that someone tried to destroy his family out of loneliness? You can't, so I let him think she moved away. I started building a new circle of friends, moms from Leo's playgroup, coworkers I'd never bothered to get close to before. It was slow. I still flinched when someone asked too many questions about my marriage, but Mike and I talked more. We started going on date nights again. The trust was shaken, but not broken. Sarah's lie made us stronger in a twisted way, but I'll never forgive her. Some people will burn your world down just for company. That story made me think about the other time I almost lost everything, not to a friend but to a boss. The boss story I told earlier, I left out the worst part. After my meeting with Dick, I went home and cried in the shower. My husband found me there and asked what was wrong. I told him about Bob's request and Dick's reaction. He said, you're not their maid, quit. But I couldn't quit without another job, so I started applying while still working 60-hour weeks. Bob's wife never stayed with me. I never replied to his text, but Dick brought it up at the next team meeting. Some of you need to understand that flexibility goes both ways, he said, staring at me. When a colleague asks for help, you help. That's how we succeed here. I just smiled and nodded. I had an interview the next morning. The new job offer came through 2 weeks later. I remember printing the letter on my home printer and holding it like a trophy. I walked into Dick's office and handed him my resignation. He scanned it and said, you're really leaving? Bob is going to be so disappointed. I laughed out loud. Bob can house his own family. I'm done being your mother. He turned red but said nothing. On my last day, Bob actually came to my desk and asked if I could still watch his dog. I said, I'm not a pet sitter either. He looked genuinely confused. That's when I knew I'd made the right call. I started my new job the following Monday. First day, the CEO greeted me by name, thanked me for joining, and asked if I needed anything. I almost cried. I'd forgotten what respect felt like. But not every story ends with a clean escape. Some linger. My husband's ex-wife situation still haunts me. Peter and I are divorced now, but Jack asks about him every week. I tell him Daddy lives far away and loves him very much. It's the truth mostly. Peter moved back to his hometown, back to Allison. I found out through his sister, who sent me a nasty text saying I was the reason he was miserable. I blocked her too. Life is quieter now. I take Jack to the park on Saturdays. I go to therapy. I'm learning that forgiveness isn't a switch. Some days I wake up and think I see them in that bedroom. Other days I remember the good times, the way he used to make me coffee, the way he held Jack after the adoption. But that isn't enough. Trust doesn't come back just because you miss someone. It's built brick by brick. Peter knocked ours down with one kiss, and I'm still sweeping up the dust. That's where I am now. Still standing, still breathing, still figuring out what comes next. If you're reading this and you're in the middle of your own wreckage, know that you're not alone. The stories we share, the ones we whisper into the dark, they connect us. And sometimes that's enough to keep going. You know what's worse than finding your husband cheating? Finding him with his ex-wife. At your son's birthday party. I'm 27, my husband Peter is 37. We've been married 3 years, together for 6. Before I came along, he was married to Allison, same age as him, 37. They divorced a year before we met. I never had a problem with her being in his past. I knew he was bisexual and I was fine with that. But his family, they were a different story. They're the kind of homophobic that smiles to your face and tells your husband he should go back to his ex behind your back. Every holiday, every visit, my mother-in-law would drop hints. Allison is so nice, Peter, she asked about you. She's still single, you know. I bit my tongue because I loved him and I loved our son Jack. Jack is 7. We adopted him after we got married. I love him like my own blood because he is. He didn't come from my body, but he came from my heart. Peter and I were his dads, and that was everything. 2 weeks ago, it was Jack's birthday. We drove to Peter's hometown to celebrate with his family. I wasn't thrilled about it, but Jack loved his cousins and his grandparents. I wanted him to have a good day. We rented a hotel room nearby. The party was at the in-laws' house. I spent the afternoon playing with Jack, helping him open presents, laughing as he ran around with his cousins. I thought everything was going fine. Then I noticed the cake was sitting on the kitchen counter uncut, and Peter was nowhere to be found. I asked his sister, "Where's Peter?" She shrugged. "I think he went upstairs." I looked around for Allison too. She had been invited by my mother-in-law. I saw her walk in an hour earlier. I didn't make a scene because it was Jack's day, but now both of them were missing. My stomach twisted. I went inside and checked the living room, the kitchen, the back porch. Nothing. Then I walked up the stairs, down the hall to Peter's old bedroom. The door was cracked open. I pushed it gently. I saw them. They were half undressed, kissing, his hands on her waist, her fingers in his hair. They were undressing each other. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. My brain just went white. Then I turned around and walked back downstairs. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I went back to the backyard and cut the cake myself. I served Jack first, then the kids, then the adults. I smiled. I said, "Happy birthday, buddy." He was so happy. That was the only thing that kept me from breaking down right there. By the time Peter and Allison came back downstairs, most of the guests were already leaving. Peter pulled me aside near the garage. His face was red. He said, "Why did you cut the cake without me? That was disrespectful. You should have waited." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went pale. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I turned, grabbed Jack, and walked to the hotel. I told Jack that Daddy was staying at Grandma's tonight and we were going to have a special sleepover. Jack was tired and didn't argue. I put him to bed in the hotel room, then sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Next morning, Peter called. I let it go to voicemail. He sent a text. "It wasn't what you think." She was upset and I was comforting her. I didn't respond. I drove Jack home that afternoon. When Peter came back 2 days later, we sat down at the kitchen table. I asked him to tell me the truth. He admitted it. They had planned it. His mother had messaged Allison and told her to come. They had been texting for weeks. He said it was a mistake, that he was confused, that he loved me. I asked, "Are you in love with her?" He didn't say no. I told him I needed space. I took Jack and stayed at my sister's place for a week. While I was there, I found out from a mutual friend that Allison was pregnant. Not with Peter's child. She was already pregnant when they hooked up, supposedly. But that didn't matter. The betrayal was done. I filed for divorce 2 weeks ago. Peter didn't fight it. He moved back to his hometown, back near Allison. I guess his family got exactly what they wanted. Jack asks about him every Sunday during our video calls. I tell him Daddy lives far away and loves him very much. That part is true, but I can't trust him anymore. I can't look at him without seeing that bedroom. The hardest part is the adoption. Jack is legally Peter's child and we adopted him together. I have no legal rights if Peter decides to fight for custody. So far he hasn't. He says he wants Jack to be happy and he knows Jack is happiest with me, but every day I worry. I've started going to therapy. I'm learning that forgiveness isn't a light switch, it takes time. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that people will show you exactly who they are when you're not looking. Peter showed me at my son's birthday party, And I'll never forget it. I thought I knew my best friend. I thought I knew her better than I knew myself. We met when I was 11, fresh off a plane from a country I barely remembered, and she was the first person who made me feel like I belonged. Her name was Sarah, and for 18 years she was my person. We shared secrets, vacations, holidays, heartbreaks. She was at my wedding. She held my hand when I gave birth to my daughter. She was the godmother, the emergency contact, the one I called at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. So when she told me she saw my husband making out with some blonde woman in his car while our 2-year-old was in the backseat, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in my car outside the gym, my hands freezing on the steering wheel, and I believed her. For about 30 seconds, I believed her completely. Let me back up. I'm 29. My husband's name is Alex, and he's 31. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6. We have a 2-year-old daughter named Lily. I work in an office from 9 to 2 most days, and I take my lunch break at a cafe near Alex's office, which is a 5-minute walk from mine. Sometimes I travel for work, not often, but enough that I mention it to Sarah in passing. Last Wednesday, I was supposed to travel to a city about 2 hours away for a meeting, but Tuesday night the weather alert came through. Red alert, flooding expected. The meeting got canceled, so I stayed home. Alex went out at 6 in the morning to close up his business and put up flood barriers. By 7:30, he was back, making breakfast in the kitchen while Lily played with her blocks on the living room floor. It didn't start raining until 1 in the afternoon. We stayed inside all day, watched movies, built forts, ate grilled cheese. It was one of those perfect, boring, beautiful days that you don't realize you're going to remember forever. At 3 o'clock, Sarah texted me, "Are you home? It's flooding where you were supposed to be." I texted back, "Home safe." We didn't go out again until Friday. Saturday morning, I went to our usual gym class. Sarah was there, but she was quiet, distant. I figured she was tired. After class, she grabbed my arm and said we needed to talk privately, so we went to my car. We sat in the front seats, the windows fogged up from the humidity, and she took a deep breath. Then she said, "On Wednesday, I saw your husband with a woman. They were making out, and your kid was in the car." I froze. My brain went blank. I felt my stomach drop like I was on a roller coaster. I asked her, "Are you sure it was this Wednesday?" "Yes." "Are you sure it was him?" "Yes." "Did you see their faces?" "I saw her, blonde, gorgeous, Barbie looking. They were in his car, parked outside the grocery store on Main Street. Lily was in the back seat. I saw her little car seat." I asked for the time. She said around 11 in the morning. I asked again if she was absolutely certain it was Wednesday, and she said yes 3 times. And then I remembered. I remembered Alex making pancakes at 7:30. I remembered Lily laughing as I chased her around the living room. I remembered the rain starting at 1. I remembered that we didn't leave the house until Friday. I remembered every single minute of that day because it was a perfect, boring, beautiful day. I looked at Sarah and I said, "That's impossible. I was home with him, with Lily, all day. We didn't go anywhere." Her face went pale. She started stammering. "Maybe I got the day wrong. Maybe it was another day." "It wasn't. I checked my calendar. I was home all week. The weather canceled everything. He didn't leave either." She started crying. She said she was just trying to protect me. She said she saw what she saw. She said maybe it was a different car. I said, "You described his car. You described his daughter's car seat." She didn't have an answer. I drove home in a daze. I told Alex what happened. He was furious. Not at me, at her. He said, "She's trying to break us up. Why would she do that?" I didn't have an answer either. I called Sarah that night. I asked her point blank, "Why did you lie?" She broke down. She said she was jealous. She said I was happy and she wasn't. She said she had been jealous of my marriage for years. She wanted me to be single so we could travel together, go out together, be like we were in college. She thought if she planted the seed of doubt, I would leave Alex and then she would have her best friend back. I told her we were done. I blocked her number. I blocked her on social media. I haven't spoken to her since. That was 3 months ago. I still think about it sometimes. Not the accusation, but the betrayal. The fact that someone I loved for 18 years tried to destroy my family because she was lonely. I don't hate her, I just don't understand. Or maybe I do understand and that's worse. Alex still asks if I'm okay. I tell him I am, and mostly I am, but there's a part of me that will never forget sitting in that car, believing for 30 seconds that my whole life was a lie. Trust is a fragile thing. Even when it survives, it carries the scar. I thought I had bad days at work, but nothing like this. And I don't mean a bad boss who yells or piles on work. I mean a boss who thinks I'm his personal concierge, his therapist, his mommy, and apparently now his free hotel for his wife, toddler, and dog for an entire week. Let me set the scene. I've been at this company for about 8 years. I started out as a junior analyst and worked my way up to a middle management role. I'm good at what I do, I'm reliable, I've never missed a deadline. I've taken on extra projects without complaint. And for my trouble, I've gotten exactly 0 raises in the last 4 years. Meanwhile, the CEO, I'll call him Dick, because that's exactly what he is, has promoted this guy Bob from entry-level to the highest non-executive position in less than 2 years. Bob, the guy who shows up late, takes naps at his desk, and somehow gets praised for being a family man because his wife stays home with their kid. I don't have a problem with stay-at-home parents. I have a problem with the double standard. When I had my baby 2 years ago, I took my maternity leave, came back, and worked my ass off to prove I was still committed. My workload didn't change, my performance didn't change. But suddenly I was not as available and distracted. They moved me to a smaller office. They gave my biggest account to Bob. When I asked for a raise, Dick said, "We need to see you focus more on the company first." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded and went back to my desk. Fast forward to this December. Bob gets promoted again. He's now above me. He's been in that new role maybe 2 months. And then I get a text. It's from Bob. He says, "Hey, we're having to fly back to the home office for a week in January for an emergency meeting. Our house sitter fell through. Can you host my wife, our toddler, and our dog at your place for the week? If not, no big deal. I can ask the company to pay for a hotel." He added that last part like it was a courtesy, like he was doing me a favor by offering an alternative. I stared at my phone. I was gobsmacked, utterly gobsmacked. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I got silently demoted for having a baby. And this guy, who gets promoted for being a dad, texts me to ask me to be his unpaid airbimb, his wife and toddler and dog, for a week. In my home, I didn't respond. I took an aspirin. Then I walked into the meeting Dick had called because of course he wanted to discuss Bob's request. I sat down. Dick smiled at me with that fake, patronizing smile he always gives. "So Bob reached out to you about hosting his family. I think it's a great opportunity for team bonding. You'd be doing him a solid and I'd really appreciate it." I said, "Dick, I have a 2-year-old. My house is small. I don't have space for 3 extra people and a dog for a week. I'm not a hotel." Dick's smile flickered. "It's just 1 week. Think of it as helping a colleague. Bob is very important to this company. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I was demoted after my baby. Bob's been promoted 3 times for having a baby, and now he wants me to host his family for free. That's not team bonding, that's entitlement." Dick leaned forward. "Are you saying no?" "Yes, I'm saying no." He sat back, silent. Then he said, "I'm disappointed. I thought you were a team player." I didn't say anything else. I left the meeting. I went back to my desk and started updating my resume. Because I know that no matter how good I am at my job, no matter how many years I've given this place, no matter how many times I've swallowed my pride, they will never see me as anything more than the office mother who's supposed to take care of everyone else's mess. So that's where I am now. January is coming. Bob's wife and toddler and dog are probably in a hotel. I'm job hunting. And Dick can shove his team bonding right up his ass. I don't know if I'll find something better. But at least I won't be hosting my boss's family in my living room while he gets paid 6 figures for napping. I thought that was the worst thing that would happen to me that month. I was wrong. Because while I was dealing with a boss who thought I was a free hotel, I got a message from an old friend that made me realize some people don't just want your time, they want your whole life to burn. Let me back up. I'm a 27-year-old guy, married to my husband Peter for 3 years, together for 6. He's 37, bisexual, and has an ex-wife named Allison, also 37. They divorced a year before we met. Peter has a son, Jack, who was 7 at the time. We adopted Jack after we got married, and I love that kid like he's my own blood. I don't care about biology. I care about who tucks him in at night and who plays catch with him in the backyard. Peter's family is a different story. They're homophobic, not in a violent way, but in that subtle, constant, "when are you going to get back together with Allison?" kind of way. Every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner, they'd say it in front of me. They'd say it in front of Jack. Peter would get quiet. I'd pretend I didn't hear, but it ate at me. 2 weeks ago, we were at Peter's parents' town for Jack's birthday. We rented a hotel room nearby. The plan was simple: cake, presents, family, leave. I was nervous, but I told myself it was just one day. Jack was excited. He loves his cousins. I kept my focus on him. The party was at Peter's childhood home. Big house, lots of rooms, plenty of places for people to disappear. Jack's birthday was in early September, still warm. We had the cake outside. I was helping set up when I noticed his mom on the phone, whispering. I didn't think anything of it. Then, in the middle of the party, a car pulled up. Allison stepped out. She was holding a gift bag and smiling. I froze. Peter's mom walked over, hugged her, and said, "I thought it would be nice for Jack to see his mother on his birthday." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Jack and leave, but I looked at my son laughing with his cousins and I couldn't do that to him, so I swallowed the rage and I stayed. I spent every minute with Jack. I played tag. I helped him open presents. I made sure he had a good day. I didn't look at Allison. I didn't look at Peter. Then it was time to cut the cake. I went to get the candles. I noticed Peter and Allison weren't outside. I asked my mother-in-law where they were. She shrugged. I walked inside. I checked the kitchen, the living room, the back bedroom. Then I went upstairs, their old bedroom. The door was slightly open. I saw them. They were taking off each other's clothes. His hands were on her waist. She was kissing his neck. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. Then I walked back downstairs. I went outside. I cut the cake. I smiled for photos. I helped Jack blow out the candles. I didn't say a word. People started leaving. Allison came out first, looking flushed. Peter came out a few minutes later wearing a different shirt. He walked over to me and said, "Hey, I noticed you cut the cake without me. That was disrespectful." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry. I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went pale. I picked Jack up, said goodbye to the cousins, and walked to the car. I drove back to the hotel. I put Jack to bed. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Peter showed up an hour later. Knocked. I didn't open. He texted, "I'm sorry, it meant nothing. She threw herself at me. I was weak. Please let me explain." I didn't answer. I fell asleep on the floor. The next morning I took Jack to breakfast. I didn't tell him anything. We went to a park, we had fun, I tried to pretend my world wasn't falling apart. Peter kept calling, I kept ignoring him. That afternoon I drove back to our house alone. I left Jack with Peter's sister, who I actually trust. I packed a bag, I told Peter I needed space. He begged, he cried. He said he'd go to therapy, he said he'd block Allison. He said he'd tell his mother she could never come near us again. I said, you already chose her over me. You chose her in that bedroom, you didn't say no, you didn't stop. You didn't think about Jack, you thought about yourself. He didn't have an answer. I've been at my mom's place for a week. I haven't spoken to him. I haven't spoken to anyone in his family. Jack calls me every night. I tell him I love him. I tell him I'll see him soon. I don't know if that's true. Yesterday, I found out that Peter's mother is telling people I'm overreacting, that it was just a kiss. That I'm too sensitive because I'm gay, that Allison is the better option. I wanted to drive over there and scream at her, but I didn't. I just hung up. I don't know if I can forgive him. I don't know if I should. He's been my partner for 6 years. We built a life. We have a son, but I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unfeel the betrayal. The saddest part is I still love him, and I hate myself for that, so yeah. That's where I am. No raise, no respect at work, and a husband who cheated with his ex-wife at his son's birthday party. I thought I had bad luck. Turns out I'm a walking cautionary tale. I don't know what happens next. I'm just trying to get through today. Tomorrow I have to see Jack. I have to look at his face and figure out how to tell him that his father broke my heart. I don't know if I'm strong enough, but I'll try. Because that's what you do, you try even when you're broken, and maybe, just maybe, one day I'll look back at this and realize I made the right choice. Whatever that ends up being, I sat on my mom's couch staring at my phone. Jack had just called me, his little voice asking when I was coming home. I told him soon. I didn't know if that was a lie. The next day, I drove back to the house. I needed clothes, I needed to see Jack. I needed to look Peter in the eye and see if there was anything left worth saving. The house was quiet when I walked in, toys scattered in the living room, Jack's drawing on the fridge, a half-empty coffee cup on the counter. It looked like a normal home, it felt like a morgue. Peter was in the kitchen, he looked terrible, red eyes, unshaven, wearing the same shirt from 3 days ago. He saw me and started crying. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. She just showed up and my mom was pushing and I felt trapped and she was there and stop, I said, just stop. He stopped. Sat down at the kitchen table. He sat across from me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Did you use protection? I asked. He flinched. What, did you use protection? No, he whispered. I closed my eyes. I wanted to throw up. So you could have given me an STD. You could have brought something home to me. You didn't think about that either. He didn't answer. I need you to get tested, I said. And I need you to stay away from me until I figure out what I want to do. Please don't leave me, he said. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off my entire family. You already said that, I said. And you already did this. You don't get to promise me things after you've already broken every promise we made. I went upstairs. I packed a duffel bag. I took my laptop, some clothes, Jack's favorite stuffed animal. I don't know why I took that. Maybe I needed something that still felt innocent. When I came back down, Jack was home. Peter's sister had dropped him off. He ran to me and hugged my legs. Daddy, I missed you, he said. I knelt down and hugged him tight. I missed you too, buddy. Are you coming back? I looked at Peter. Peter looked at the floor. Not yet, I said, but I'll always come see you. You know that, right? He nodded. He didn't really understand. He's 7. He shouldn't have to. I kissed his forehead. I walked out the door. I didn't look back. That was 2 weeks ago. Now I'm sitting in my mom's spare bedroom writing this. I've talked to a lawyer. I've started the paperwork for a separation. Peter keeps texting me, begging me, telling me he loves me. I don't respond. Yesterday, I found out that Allison texted him after that night. She said, I miss what we had. He didn't respond to her either, but he didn't block her. He said he forgot. I don't believe that. I also found out something else, something that made everything worse. Jack is not Peter's biological son. I found this out from Peter's sister, the one I actually trust. She called me crying. She said she couldn't keep it a secret anymore. She told me that Allison got pregnant while she and Peter were still married. Peter thought the baby was his, but Allison had been cheating on him with someone else. She never told him. She let him raise Jack for 3 years, let him sign the birth certificate, let him fall in love with a child that wasn't his. Then she divorced him and moved on. I asked Peter about it. He broke down. He said he found out 2 years ago when Jack needed blood work for something minor. He said he confronted Allison. She admitted it. He said he didn't tell me because he was ashamed, because he didn't want me to think less of Jack, because Jack is still his son, blood or not. I get that. I really do. I don't care about biology either. I've raised Jack since he was 4. He's my son. That will never change. But the lying, the constant, endless lying. And now I have to wonder, does Allison know? Is that why she came to the birthday party? Is that why she threw herself at Peter? Because she wanted to stir up chaos. She wanted to remind him of what they had. I don't know. I don't trust anything anymore. I'm not going to let Jack down. I'm going to be in his life no matter what. I'm going to fight for him, but I don't know if I can fight for Peter. Some days I think maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe it was one mistake. Maybe his family pressured him. Maybe I should give him another chance. Then I remember the look on his face when I caught him, the way his hands were on her waist. The way he didn't even try to explain, he just stood there guilty. And then I know I'm not overreacting. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I'm still Jack's dad. That's all I've got right now, but it's enough. A few months later, I thought I'd seen it all. Then Sarah called. I met Sarah when I was 11. I had just moved to a new country with my family. My sister-in-law introduced us. Sarah was 11 too. We became inseparable. We went through middle school together, high school, college. We were in each other's weddings. She was at my baby shower. She held my daughter when she was 2 hours old. Sarah was family. She was the person I called when my husband and I had our first fight. She was the person who drove me to the hospital when I had a miscarriage. She held my hand and told me it would be okay. I believed her. I never thought she would try to destroy my life. Let me back up. I'm Tuna. My husband is Threon. We've been together for 8 years, married for 4. We have a 2-year-old daughter. My husband owns a small business. I work in an office. We have a good life, not perfect, but good. Last November, I had to travel for work on a Wednesday. It was just a day trip to a nearby city, nothing unusual. But Tuesday night there was a red alert about the weather, flooding expected, so the trip was cancelled. I stayed home. My husband woke up at 6 a.m. to close his shop and put up flood barriers. By 7:30 he was back home. He made breakfast. We stayed inside all day. It didn't start raining until 1 p.m. We watched movies. We played with our daughter. It was a normal, boring, perfect day. On Saturday I went to my usual gym class. Sarah was there. After class she pulled me aside. She looked serious. "We need to talk," she said, in private. We went to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. She sat in the passenger seat. She took a deep breath. "On Wednesday," she said, "I saw your husband with a woman. They were kissing in a car. Your daughter was in the backseat." I stared at her. She kept talking. "I was driving by the park near your house. I saw his truck. I saw a blonde woman in the passenger seat. They were making out. I saw your daughter in the back. I didn't know what to do. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." My heart was pounding. But then something clicked. "Wednesday?" I said. "Yes." "Wednesday? What time?" "About 11 a.m. You're sure it was Wednesday?" "Positive." "And it was during the red alert when it was flooding?" "Yes." I looked at her. She looked at me. I could see she was nervous, but I could also see something else, something like excitement, like she was waiting for me to fall apart. I didn't fall apart. "Sarah," I said, "I was home all day Wednesday. My husband came back at 7:30 a.m. He didn't leave. We were together the whole day. I was there. My daughter was there. Your story doesn't make sense." Her face went blank. "What?" "I stayed home because of the weather. My trip was canceled. My husband didn't go anywhere. I made breakfast. He helped me clean. We watched Frozen twice. My daughter was in my lap. There was no parking lot. There was no blonde woman. There was no kiss." She didn't speak. "Why, Sarah?" I asked. "Why would you lie about this?" She started crying, not sad crying, angry crying. "I didn't lie. I saw what I saw." "You saw something that didn't happen. You made this up. You wanted me to think my husband was cheating on me." "I'm not a liar." "Then explain it." "Explain how my husband was kissing a woman in a parking lot when he was sitting next to me on the couch." She couldn't. She just kept crying. She kept saying she was telling the truth. She kept insisting I was wrong. I told her to get out of my car. She did. I watched her walk to her car. She didn't look back. I drove home. I told my husband what happened. He was shocked. He said he barely knew Sarah. He said he'd never given her a reason to dislike him. I called our other friends. I asked if Sarah had said anything strange about my husband. One of them told me that Sarah had been complaining that I was too busy for her recently, that I changed after I had a baby, that I picked my husband over her. I started putting pieces together. Sarah was jealous. She wanted my attention. She thought if she could make me leave my husband, I would have more time for her. She thought I would be a single mom, desperate, needing her support. She didn't count on me remembering that I stayed home that day. I haven't spoken to her since. I blocked her number. I blocked her on social media. I told everyone the truth. Some people believed me, some didn't. A few of our mutual friends said I was being too hard on her. They said she made a mistake and I should forgive her. I don't forgive people who try to burn down my life. It's been a few months now. I'm still married. I'm still happy. My daughter doesn't know about any of it. She just knows we don't see Aunt Sarah anymore. Sometimes I still think about it, how close I came to believing her. How easily she could have destroyed everything if I had been out of town. If my husband had actually been at work, if I hadn't asked the right questions. I trusted that woman for 18 years. She was my sister, and she tried to ruin me because she missed hanging out. I don't know what happens next with my marriage, but for the first time in years, I know I'm not the one who's crazy. That wasn't the only time I had to deal with people who thought they could walk all over me. A few years ago, I learned that some people have zero sense of boundaries, especially at work. My name is not important. I'll just say I worked for a company where the CEO, let's call him Dick because he is one, had a golden boy named Bob. Bob was a classic brown-noser. When his wife had a baby and became a SAHM, Dick practically threw a parade for him. Such a good dad, so admirable. He promoted Bob. Then Bob started showing up late, missing meetings, sleeping at his desk. Did Dick care? No, he was too busy patting Bob on the back. Meanwhile, I was the one actually doing the work. I had been there for years. I managed a team. I hit every deadline, then I had a baby. And Dick suddenly saw me differently. He didn't give me a raise for 4 years. He silently demoted me. He said my focus had shifted. My work hadn't changed. I was still doing the same job, but now I was a mother, and in his eyes that made me less valuable. Bob, on the other hand, was a father, and that made him a hero. A year ago, Bob had a family emergency and moved across the country. Dick promoted him again. Bob went from being at my level to above me. He became impossible to reach. If I needed something from him, I had to go through 3 people. He was just gone. Fast forward to this January. I'm sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Bob. Hey, my wife and toddler and dog need to stay with someone for a week in January. Can they crash at your place? If not, I'll ask the company to pay for my hotel. I stared at my phone. I couldn't believe it. This man, who had been promoted 3 times in 2 years while I got demoted for having a baby, was asking to use my home as a free hotel for his family. He didn't ask if I was available. He didn't ask if I had room. He just assumed I would say yes. And if I didn't, he'd get the company to pay for his accommodations anyway. So really, I had no choice. I didn't reply. I just sat there, my blood boiling. Then my phone rang. It was Dick. Hey, did you get Bob's text? He mentioned you'd be happy to host. That's great. I told him you're a team player. I told Dick, actually, I haven't agreed. He paused. But you will, right? He's family now. You know how it is. No, I didn't know how it was, because ever since I had my baby, Dick treated me like a problem. He cut my responsibilities. He stopped inviting me to meetings. He told my colleagues I was going through a phase. And now he wanted me to open my home to Bob's family, the same Bob who couldn't be bothered to respond to my emails. I said no. I said it clearly. Dick didn't take it well. That I was being difficult. He said I was letting the team down. He said he expected better from me. I said, you expect me to provide free housing for someone you promoted because he's a dad? I got demoted for being a mom. I haven't had a raise in 4 years. And you want me to host your golden boy's wife and toddler? No, he hung up. The next day I got an email from HR. It wasn't about Bob. It was about me. They said they had received a behavioral concern about me. I knew exactly where it came from. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just started sending out resumes. Because I've learned that when people show you who they are, you believe them. Dick showed me that I was disposable. Bob showed me that he would take everything and give nothing. And HR showed me that the system is designed to protect people like them. It's been a few months now. I left that job. I found a place that respects me. Bob still works there, I'm sure. Dick is still the CEO. But I'm not part of their circus anymore. Sometimes I think about that text, the audacity of it, the assumption that I would just say yes because I'm a woman, because I'm a mother, because I'm supposed to be nice. But I'm done being nice at the expense of my sanity. I don't know if I'll ever stop being angry about it. But I do know one thing: the next time someone asks me to host their family, I'll say no before they even finish the sentence. And I won't feel guilty about it. That's the thing about boundaries. Once you start setting them, you realize how many people were relying on you to have none. So keep your golden boys and your CEO dicks. I'll keep my peace. But that wasn't the only time I learned that trust can be broken in an instant. Another story comes to mind, one about a husband, an ex-wife, and a birthday party that changed everything. I'm a 27-year-old guy married to my husband Peter for 3 years, together for 6. He's 37, bisexual, and he has an ex-wife named Allison, also 37. They divorced a year before we met. We adopted a son, Jack, who's 7 now, and I love him like my own blood. Peter's family has always been a problem. They're homophobic and keep pushing him to get back with Allison. I dealt with it, kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to cause drama. 2 weeks ago, we went to Peter's hometown for Jack's birthday. We wanted to celebrate with the whole family. The party was at his mom's house. Everything was fine until I noticed Allison walk in the door. My mother-in-law had invited her without telling me. I didn't want to ruin Jack's day, so I stayed calm, played with the kids, ate cake, kept smiling. Then I noticed Peter and Allison were gone. I went inside, checked the living room, the kitchen, then walked down the hallway to Peter's old bedroom. The door was cracked open. I pushed it just enough. They were both taking their clothes off. I stood there frozen for maybe 5 seconds, then I walked back to the party. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just went back to Jack and helped him open presents. An hour later, Peter and Allison came back downstairs. Peter pulled me aside looking pissed. He said I was disrespectful for cutting the cake without him. I stared at him and said, I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants. His face went white. He didn't say a word. I grabbed Jack and left. We went back to the hotel and I put Jack to bed. The next morning, Peter called me. He said he was sorry, that it was a mistake, that he was drunk. I told him I didn't care. He said his family put pressure on him, that Allison came onto him. I said, you chose to take your clothes off. He didn't have an answer. I stayed with my parents for a week. Peter texted every day begging me to come back. I told him I needed time. Then Allison started texting me saying it was my fault for being controlling, that Peter was always going to come back to her. I blocked her. I talked to a lawyer. I started thinking about divorce. But then Peter showed up at my parents' house crying, saying he would do anything to fix this. He said he would cut off his family, get therapy, do whatever I needed. He said he loved me and Jack and that he couldn't lose us. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to believe him, but I can still see them in that room. I still feel that moment when the world tilted. Jack keeps asking when Daddy is coming home. I don't have an answer. Sometimes I wonder if I'm overreacting. Then I remember that he took off his wedding ring before he kissed her. He put it on his nightstand. I saw it when I walked in. I haven't made a decision yet, but I know one thing: trust doesn't break all at once. It